In this world, some people sleep soundly, some suffer from insomnia, some are wealthy, some are poor, some are ill, and some are healthy. The world keeps turning like that, full of unequal destinies. Yet fate always contains one certain kind of fairness that everyone must face and pass through: loneliness and death. Human beings either are never born at all, or once born, are certain to die. And in the process from life to death, loneliness will always accompany us. Truly, no one wants to walk alone through an endless barren field, and yet in the end all of us must stand naked and solitary by ourselves. Each and every one of us is, at heart, a lonely island. Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to XYZ Library, a channel that shares knowledge and encourages holistic self-development through good books. This week, I would like to share with you a reflection entitled, "A Strong Inner Life Begins with Learning to Enjoy Solitude." Through the classic work, 100 Years of Solitude, by the great Colombian writer, Gabriel García Márquez, the Nobel Prize winner in literature whose honor was met with no controversy at all. 100 Years of Solitude is hailed as a masterpiece that recreates the historical and social landscape of Latin America. It has even been said, if there were only one book left on the shelf, it would be 100 Years of Solitude. The novel tells the legendary story of 7 generations of the Buendia family and the century-long rise and fall of Macondo, a small town on the Caribbean coast. The stories in 100 Years of Solitude are fascinating, full of gripping turns, yet deeply saturated with loneliness and death. In this world, the struggle between human beings, fate, and solitude carries profound philosophical meanings that cannot help but leave the reader reflecting. The Buendia family seems cursed from one generation to the next. Each of them must pass through the cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death, together with loneliness. Their solitude and confusion seem to reflect the deepest hidden emotions of real human beings. The fate of this family is very much like the fate of humanity, the fate of you and of me, full of impermanence and uncertainty. In facing solitude and confusion, all of us are searching for the true meaning of life. 100 Years of Solitude will give you a deeper view of loneliness and help you understand that death and solitude are the fairest things in the world. The fairness lies in this. No matter who you are, whether you have status or wealth or not, whether you have love or not, whether you are healthy or ill, first of all, you must always have the ability to face solitude, so that you may allow yourself to walk alone into this boundless wilderness, savor solitude with a strong inner life, and from that, come to understand how you should live the rest of your life. Loneliness, because no one understands. In 100 Years of Solitude, there is a family that lasts through a whole century. From the first generation to the 7th, all of them struggle against loneliness. Yet in the end, each one meets a lonely death. The first generation of the Buendia line, José Arcadio Buendia, originally lived in Rio Jaca and married his cousin. The girl was always terrified that if she slept with someone of her own bloodline, she would give birth to a child with a pig's tail, so she did not dare consummate the marriage. She always wore a protective garment sewn by her mother, fastened with thick iron clasps. Arcadio was only 19 at the time, still very young, and did not care whether they might give birth to a little pig, so long as the child could talk. But the story of the two of them still became a laughingstock for everyone. One day, unable to endure the men who mocked him and his wife, Arcadio killed one of them. Afterward, burdened by guilt, he constantly saw the dead man's ghost everywhere in the house. Driven by fear, the couple led several companions away and migrated to a new place. 14 months later, they had a healthy baby boy. Arcadio persuaded everyone to stay in that newly reached wilderness and formally founded the isolated little village of Macondo. As the founder of the village, Arcadio was always responsible, inventive, and gifted with an extraordinary spirit of curiosity and exploration. When he saw the magnets brought by the old gypsy, he wanted to use them to extract gold. When he saw the magnifying glass that could concentrate sunlight, he wanted to turn it into an immensely powerful weapon. Each time he saw one of the gypsy's inventions, he felt as though he had discovered treasure. Arcadio was a man of boundless curiosity and enthusiasm for everything new. He truly was the kind of person who dared to think and dared to act, and he was always busy planning roads and houses to ensure that everyone had equal rights. Arcadio also taught others how to sow seeds and raise children. It must be said that he was the only one able to see clearly both the reality of the present and the future. This ambitious and determined Arcadio longed to open a road that would connect Macondo to the outside world of civilization. He eagerly studied, experimented, and devoted himself completely, forgetting the passing years. And yet the people of Macondo, backward and closed off, thought he was a mad dreamer, and even his wife could not understand him. She was always disappointed and told him that he was failing in his duties. The only one who truly understood him and praised him as a great man was an old gypsy. But when that old man died, Arcadio lost his reason, became depressed, and often descended into madness. His wife could no longer endure it, so she tied him to a large tree. From then on, he lived alone beneath that tree until he died. Was Arcadio successful? The answer is yes. Was Arcadio lonely? The answer is also yes. Arcadio's loneliness was the loneliness of being unable to merge with other people, the loneliness of being cut off from the majority. It was not simply the loneliness of having no one beside him, nor the loneliness of being hated coldly by others, but the loneliness of having no one at all who understood him. As the famous line in A Kind of Solitude says, "Human beings are all lonely. No one can escape it." I think what we call loneliness is when the person in front of you and your own feelings are simply not on the same frequency. Gradually, you realize that what you lack is not friends, but one person whose soul can be in tune with yours. William Wharton used the whole novel Birdie to tell the story of a young man yearning to fly freely like a bird, in order to tell us that the essence of human loneliness is not being understood by others. But in 100 years of solitude, this loneliness is even more frightening. It is not merely that no one understands you, but that even you yourself cannot understand your own self. He cannot fly because he does not believe that he can. Arcadio was talented and full of determination. Perhaps many times he rose above the loneliness of not being understood by others. But in truth, he was ultimately drowned by that very loneliness, because the last person who believed in him had departed, and because he himself no longer believed in himself either. Loneliness because there is no love. After Arcadio's death, life in Macondo remained lively, and its population continued to grow. Meanwhile, his wife also could not escape the fate of loneliness. She lived through all the upheavals of Macondo. She managed the household, cared for the children, and everything she did was orderly from beginning to end. She even made little candy animals to earn extra money for the family. With money earned through hard work, she built the largest house in Macondo. She spent all day busy, all her life. But that busyness was only a way of helping herself escape loneliness. She devoted her whole life to her family, yet never received love from her husband or descendants. In her later years, Ursula became blind, yet no one in the family even noticed that she relied on her sense of smell to recognize people. She was forgotten by her family and left alone in her room. Her children and grandchildren went away to pursue their own lives, and in the end, she died in helplessness and loneliness. The love she received from generation after generation of descendants was faint and thin. As a character who runs through the entire book, she shows herself to be a woman living in a family where there was no love at all. And just like her, in our real lives, many people spend their whole lifetime repeating this loneliness, born of emotional deprivation. This loneliness of living in an environment lacking love may be like a curse laid upon the soul. When night falls, when people get off work and the streets fill with traffic, you look up at the lit windows, yet you feel that the weary body inside you has nothing to do with any of it. Sometimes, even when there are many people around you, even when the person you love most is sleeping beside you, you can still undergo an indescribable loneliness. We imagine that if we have a companion, we will not be lonely. But even those who have companions are lonely. Single people are lonely. Married people can also be lonely. Those who are bored are lonely. Those who are busy are lonely as well. You will be lonely under the night sky, and lonely even in daylight. Loneliness will always lurk nearby, and it will arrive at a certain moment in your life. But the great question here is this: is the moment that makes you lonely the moment when others do not love you? Or is it because you want someone beside you, because you want to be loved? The truth is that if your heart truly carries someone, you will not be lonely. If your inner self is full of love, you will not be lonely either. Loneliness comes when the inside of you feels lacking. But perhaps what you lack is not someone who loves you, but the capacity to love. That too is the loneliness that Ursula tasted, the loneliness of most of the members of the Buendia family, until at last all of them were swallowed by it. The more one wants to escape loneliness, the more loneliness devours one. Now let us turn to the second generation. Of the two sons of Arcadio and Ursula, Aureliano is certainly the one whose life was most glorious, but also the one who was most lonely. Even in his mother's womb, Aureliano cried out. When he was born, he possessed the innate ability to foresee events. But that unusual gift was like a curse, making him withdrawn and taciturn. From childhood, like his father, he was curious about new things. He began learning to read, write, and calculate, and spent days and nights studying alchemy. Yet alchemy did not truly free him from loneliness. He needed spiritual comfort from his brother José Arcadio. Many nights the two brothers talked without sleeping, sharing joys and sorrows. But one day, that older brother, having newly discovered love, ran away with a gypsy girl and disappeared without a trace. Perhaps, like Aureliano, for us too the company of others is like a sedative. It can ease loneliness, but it cannot cure it. After losing the one person to whom he could speak openly, Aureliano could no longer find comfort to fill the emptiness inside. So he turned again to relieving his sadness by immersing himself in experiments, making little gold fishes, and spending day after day busy in the workshop from morning to night, year after year. He became an excellent goldsmith, but deliberately buried himself in his own world, unwilling to marry or even speak of marriage. Only when he met the beautiful 9-year-old Remedios was the emptiness in his heart filled. The soul that had seemed long gone suddenly awakened for a moment, and so, regardless of public opinion, he insisted on marrying a girl scarcely older than a child. Nourished by love, he seemed to become another person altogether, talkative, sociable, the gloom disappearing from his face. But the happy time did not last long. Remedios died after accidentally drinking poisoned coffee. Faced with the cruelty of fate, Aureliano was filled with bitterness yet powerless. He could only gather the shattered fragments of memory and endure an even deeper loneliness. And so Aureliano returned again to his little gold fishes until the call of war sounded across Macondo. The young people eagerly joined the revolution. Aureliano, already desperate to escape the darkness of loneliness, saw the war like a lifeline. At first, he could hardly distinguish one political faction from another, but a few months later, he had already led a group of fellow townsmen into rebellion and begun a military career. Later, over the span of 20 years, Aureliano launched 32 armed uprisings, survived 14 assassination attempts, and 73 ambushes. He rose to the rank of supreme commander, with all power in his hands. From north to south, from east to west, he made his enemies tremble. At that point, he did not lack the pleasures of the world either. He fathered 17 sons, with 17 women, and yet the emptiness born from the peak of power and the numbness that came from drunkenness without love brought him only the icy chill of loneliness. When his 17 sons grew up and came to Macondo searching for their father, all of them were murdered in obscure ways, and not one survived. Even his former lover and the servants around him, directly or indirectly, took part in plots against him. After nearly being poisoned by a cup of coffee, Aureliano became a suspicious and cold-blooded man. He killed a general who had once been very kind to his father, and drove that man's whole family away. As time passed, relatives and comrades alike abandoned him. Love, power, and death could give him only brief intoxication, but none of them could free him from loneliness. In truth, many people are like Aureliano. When lonely, they begin constantly searching for comfort to drive away the emptiness inside, ceaselessly pursuing power, fame, material things, the feeling of being loved, and so on, hoping to overwhelm loneliness. But that very effort to break loneliness quickly is what creates the greatest loneliness of all. As Alain de Botton said, "While alive, man has behind him the darkness of solitude, and before him the stairs leading to the grave." Life is solitary by nature. Solitude is an inborn destiny, a normal state of life. The more you struggle to flee it, the deeper you sink into the mire of suffering. A strong inner life begins with savoring solitude. When Aureliano stood on the platform of glory, surrounded by soldiers, respected by the people as a great hero, only he himself understood how terrifyingly empty his soul had become under the assault of loneliness. He compared himself, in disgust, to a pig wallowing in a sty of honor, unable to feel real joy or satisfaction. He grew more and more bewildered, no longer understanding why he had fought in the first place. Not long after, the restlessness in his heart drove him to decide to surrender. One colonel who had once fought beside him through life and death tried to stop him, but Aureliano refused to listen and even ordered that man's execution. On the day of the execution, his mother arrived, halted the act of cruelty, and urged him to turn back. At that moment, he fell into inner struggle and decided to shut himself away and reflect on himself. After several hours of silence, the image of his father absorbed in casting metal suddenly awakened him. What meaning did supreme power really have? However dazzling the legend surrounding him, it was worth less than the quiet days when he sat alone in the workshop making little gold fishes. Loneliness could never be filled, and each person could find his own moments of happiness, only in the cracks within it. Aureliano decided to reconcile himself with the cage that had bound him for most of his life, and to live the life he truly wanted. He freed the condemned colonel, took off his uniform, and returned to his family. He stayed in the workshop every day without leaving the house, making little gold fishes day after day, and found an unprecedented peace in that concentration. After what seemed a heroic circle through life, Aureliano returned to his starting point. Loneliness remained with him all along the journey, from childhood to adulthood, from the furnace to the battlefield. But this time, he calmly accepted solitude, learned how to be at peace alone, and savored the stillness undisturbed by the world. The coldness and agitation in his heart gradually dissolved. At last, he passed through the rest of his life in peace. As one saying goes, loneliness is the darkness in life that cannot be avoided. It cannot be overcome. The only thing we can do is live with it in peace. Whether you fight desperately against solitude or surrender to it passively, you still fall into a kind of self-destruction. If you treat loneliness as a terror and chase external things to fill it, endless love, endless pleasure, endless shopping, endless desire, endless pursuit of wealth, then loneliness will ultimately devour you like a wild beast. But if you treat loneliness as a quiet land, separated from the noise of the world, giving you absolute inward stillness so that you may return to yourself, focus on your own life, and on the things that make you forget the passage of time, then your heart will be filled with true peace and calm. When you learn to step back from the endless rhythm of pursuit, to enjoy being alone, and to stop resisting solitude, you will be able to settle your heart, rediscover your own rhythm, and finally experience the richness and peace that destiny can truly offer. A few reflections at the end. So why do people grow more and more lonely? Perhaps because we always believe ourselves to be lacking. The more lacking we feel, the more we desire. If we lack affection, we want to be loved. If we lack material things, we want money, power, status, fame. Perhaps the essence of human nature is burning desire. When desire is fulfilled, people feel bored. When desire is unfulfilled, people feel pain. Human beings are always oscillating between pain and boredom. And indeed, when the price we pay for those desires is loneliness until death. Just like Buendia, in the first generation, who killed because of desire. He saw the strange objects the gypsies brought, became obsessed with learning and imitating until he went mad. Aureliano, too, driven by ambition, launched his revolution. His craving to be respected by others inflated his ego until he spent his whole life in a frenzy of pursuit. Loneliness is not frightening in itself, but if you live with desire as your guide, then when loneliness comes, it will become like a ghost, covering and ruining your life. Live without letting desire rule you, and do not try to resist solitude either. There is a very classic passage in 100 Years of Solitude that says, "Life never exists apart from solitude. We are born, we grow up, we love, we succeed or fail, and in the end, solitude still remains in some corner of life like a shadow." Now think about the solitude that runs through your own life. When you are born and still a child, you are surrounded by warmth from those around you. But then one day, you discover that you have begun to stand on your own in many things, and that you are very different from the friends around you. Comparison begins to arise in you. At that moment, the first solitude arrives. But because you are still young, the world is vivid and attractive everywhere, and for a while you forget that loneliness. Then, As you grow older and begin building personal relationships, you discover that what you truly need is not necessarily something others can give you, and what others want is not necessarily something you can give them. And so you sink into a second solitude, the solitude of not being understood, of being unable to harmonize with others. At that point, you long to be loved, but the more desperately you want love, the more easily you fall into emptiness and vulnerability. Of course, the material world continues to display itself before us in dazzling colors. In order to fill those voids, we become passionately caught in desire, investing all our time in the things this world calls abundant and successful status, reputation, money, and so on. But once we attain them, we feel emptiness again. Indeed, even if you stand upon the highest monument, you may suddenly find yourself immersed once more in loneliness. Perhaps only near the end of life do we realize that heaven has thrown us into this world with so many others, not so that we may deposit our souls into someone else, but so that we may learn to take responsibility for our own lives, so that we may understand that simply shutting our eyes does not make loneliness go away. Loneliness is always there, just like death. It comes to everyone, and it will gently accompany us until the very end. Aureliano spent most of his life stumbling, and only in the end realized that loneliness is like a part of each person's body. When a person's inner world is rich and full, he will naturally stop seeking outward things to fill his solitude. Of course, this book also speaks about the loneliness and history of a family, the magnificent history of Latin America, and the fate of humankind. I hope you will read the entire novel in order to understand the full meaning of this classic work. Today's video is only one small reflection on the solitude of the individual. Finally, I truly hope to convey to you one message. Do not run away from loneliness. Like death, it will always be there waiting for you. Do not fear it, because you are already whole. Thank you for listening. If you found this video helpful, please share it with those who need it. Give me a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you can catch new videos every week. Once again, thank you all, and see you in the next videos.